Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Scope. I lead services offering design and customer experience initiatives here at Amplify, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Valerie Gainey, Executive Director of CRM at Shiseido. We're going to take you through some best practices for how to implement CDP. And really our goal is to talk a little bit about kind of the things outside of the technology itself that it takes to make a project successful. We know that digital transformation is about more than just technology, right? I'm sure a lot of folks in the room have kind of been through these types of projects before. And it really takes a lot of change across people and process. And so we know that this is hard because organizations change at a much slower pace than technology does, right? So it's really important to be thoughtful about how to approach that. And so we'll get into some best practices that we've learned along the way. And we're really lucky to have Valerie joining us as well because she's kind of been on the front lines of making this happen at Shiseido. So before we jump into the best practices, I want to turn it over to Valerie, tell us a little bit about herself, Shiseido, and a little bit about the before and after of their implementation.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. I'm Valerie Gainey, and I lead CRM at Shiseido Americas, driving digital transformation. A little bit about me. So I have over 20 years of CRM experience, and I've always loved beauty, so I've landed in the right space. I've been at Shiseido for 5 years now, and I've seen the CDP from a fledgling idea to RFP through to implementation and launch. Truly a journey. And my best friend Sullivan has been with me every step along the way. I know everyone loves a pet moment. Now a little bit about Shiseido. We've been around for over 150 years, starting as a family business and growing into a global beauty company with quite an impressive portfolio of brands. Our company's mission is beauty innovations for a better world, and I couldn't think of a better tie-in with digital transformation and why we're here today. I wanted to start off by grounding you on where we were. As a 150-year-old company, we're sitting on a huge repository of data, and we needed a way to understand our customers better and quicker in order to deliver great moments for them. As marketers, we lacked no access to our data. So we had to answer our business questions by submitting a ticket, prioritizing it into a queue, and waiting sometimes days, weeks, or even months. This really hindered our agility to react to our changing business needs and customer demands. We needed a solution to bring us to the next level. With Amplify, we now have the information at our fingertips, and we can unlock so much insights about our customers and personalize the journey. We have the ability to self-serve, creating independence, autonomy, agility, and speed to market. It certainly was a journey to get here, but a rewarding one for our stakeholders. We started by gaining alignment. We established use cases, and then we prepared for launch, from training and testing through to change management. There's a lot to unpack here, so we will share more shortly. But first, just sharing some of the really nice results we've seen in terms of efficiencies. We've saved both time and money in our campaign execution through the self-serve model, which is truly a testament to the over 50 platform users that are using the tool on a daily basis.
Amazing. Great, so let's jump into some best practices and we'll hear a little bit more from Valerie along the way. So we've already kind of talked about the fact that a successful implementation requires a coordination amongst technology, people, and process. And we typically find that these kind of reinforce themselves into kind of this nice flywheel effect, really all anchored in goal alignment and shared use cases for what the project is trying to achieve. So we'll walk through kind of one best practice across each of these, starting with what we think is the most important, which is ensuring that you're anchored in business goals and use cases. So we know that business goals kind of set the foundation for the project, right? And what you want to think about here is really like the big, hairy goals that every executive at the company is thinking about, so that it's really something that all the teams can kind of drive alignment around. This could be anything from, hey, our business is not seeing enough new customers coming in, to we're not able to react to the landscape fast enough and kind of move with speed and agility. And then from there, you can translate that into like what kind of actions are we actually going to take. In this example, this is a customer journey framework that we often use to kind of translate goals into actual activation. Let's say, for example, the trouble that we're seeing is not being able to acquire enough customers. We would recommend looking at some of the use cases up in yellow here, like high-value lookalike targeting with high-quality first-party data, or optimizing your paid media budgets based on where you're seeing high-value customers come in from in terms of channels. And that sounds really simple as an activation, but we know that upstream it takes a lot of work to get to the data, the connections, the insights that you need to ultimately launch those use cases. But starting from the goals and laddering down into what you want to do allows you to kind of then inform how the project is going to shape from there. So Valerie, I know you did a lot of this at Shiseido. Can you tell us a little bit about defining use cases and making sure goals were aligned?
Absolutely. So understanding how you're going to use the CDP is really a critical part of your investment. It may sound counterintuitive, but defining your use cases upfront really helps you educate your stakeholders on the goals, processes, and outcomes. It creates a common goal that everybody's trying to work towards. We established a very robust roadmap of test cases and approached from a crawl, walk, run phase. We wanted to start with crawl because we wanted to ease users into the platform. We do have over 50 users, so it's a lot. And we also wanted to really take that low-hanging fruit and activate it for some really nice quick wins to show the value.
And how did you think about, you defined use cases, how did you think about driving executive alignment and making sure they were on board with the project?
That's a great question and a very important one. So for each of our use cases, we really established projections from a high, medium, and low perspective in order to quantify the value and then share the bigger picture with the executive team to understand the return on investment.
Awesome. Thank you. Great. Let's talk about technology. Obviously, an obvious one here is what platform you're going to invest in. Since we're at Amplify, let's assume you've chosen Amperity. And then we'll talk a little bit about kind of other elements of the technology that are really important. For us, the number one thing that we see slow down implementation projects is actually ensuring data availability. So getting the data from your source systems to Amperity so we can even start the project to begin with. And what are some of the common barriers that we see here? The first is not having the data owners involved, right? This is a really critical piece, right? Understanding who needs to be involved to actually acquire that data from internal systems and get it over into Amperity, and making sure they have enough lead time to be able to do that. A second one is those folks might be involved, but they're not clear on what the requirements are. This goes back to the goals and the use cases, so being really clear on like, here's what we're trying to achieve, not 2 years from now, but actually in the next 6 months, helps you say, great, here's the first cut of data that we need. We, of course, have a ton of best practices around what we see as a good starting point as well, but really the goals and the use cases help inform that. And then finally, bandwidth. This is where having that goal alignment that the whole org is aligned around is really important, because there's no shortage of things on the IT roadmap, right? And those folks need to be able to dedicate time to the project. So making sure that everybody agrees that this is the project we're going to undertake and is committed to the timeline here is really important. And then we try to make this as easy as possible by not requiring as much data transformation up front. So hopefully we're also saving them some time, right, in being able to actually pass the data to us in the format that it lives in the source systems. So Valerie, turning over to you, tell us a little bit about how you managed this at Shiseido.
Sure. So you've established your use cases, and now it's understanding what information you need to be able to activate on them. We really partnered very closely with our source system owners to understand specifically what we needed to bring in to activate our specific use cases. So for us, everything from transactional data to web data, email data, SMS data, customer service data, you get the picture. We brought in a lot of data. This really helped us build that holistic profile of our customer and be able to hit the ground, I would say running, but really crawling. So by educating our data owners, we were able to bridge the gap between the marketing strategy and what we're trying to accomplish and the technical aspect. Data is really messy and there's a lot of it. So being able to have that conversation in partnership with your data owners is really an important part. And I would say it's not a set it and forget it, because we're finding that as we mature our CDP usage, we find that there are new sources we're looking to bring in or also augment our existing ones. So maintaining that partnership will be really key in your success.
Amazing. Perfect. So let's talk a little bit about people. So getting the right people involved, making sure you have the right connectivity in the org between those folks. What we often find is that a determinant of speed to value is really the right leadership and staffing of the project, and we find that these 5 roles are really, really important to have involved. So the first is an executive sponsor. This is really somebody who's championing their project internally and making sure that we've got that resource allocation. Then we've got a CDP product owner. This is not necessarily a project manager, but somebody who's responsible for the success of the initial project and also ongoing adoption. So really somebody who's continuing on that change management journey. Then we've got data SMEs, so folks who actually can get that source data into the system and also be available for things like QA, making sure we understand kind of how internal data, what it translates into Amperity. And then the 2 last ones are really about how is this going to be used downstream, right? So a customer data analyst, this is a person who's going to be using the data in a BI tool who can help inform the requirements, right? These are the types of analyses I need to do, therefore I need these attributes in this type of data. And then, of course, marketing campaign managers who are actually executing use cases in downstream systems to help inform these are the types of attributes I need for segmentation, these are the types of tools I need to be able to connect to. And then it's really important, obviously, that these are all connected to each other, but there's not a one-size-fits-all for how we see that. So we'll walk through a couple of examples of how we've seen this set up in different orgs. First is kind of a data of excellence model. This is often more mature organizations who have a chief data officer as the executive sponsor. And then they've got a whole host of folks who kind of have a full-time job around the CDP. And maybe they're working cross-functionally with a couple of these roles. In another example, and this I think is more akin to the Shiseido example, is a marketing-led investment. So the CMO is typically the executive sponsor, and the marketing team are the folks kind of leading the charge on the project, and then of course bringing in, again, some of those cross-functional stakeholders. And then finally, a matrix model is something else we see, where we might even have kind of dual executive sponsors, and then a team that's kind of established, a tiger team that's kind of established from cross-functional organizations who kind of share the CDP roadmap as their shared goal. So really the important part here being getting the right people involved and making sure that organizationally you're set up for those folks to collaborate. So I want to turn it over to you, Valerie. Tell us a little bit about how you guys did this at Shiseido.
Yeah, I mean, it truly takes a village, and do not underestimate that. Shiseido is really a highly matrixed organization, so it was important for us to define all the stakeholders up front and their different roles and responsibilities. So really, defining this RACI helps you communicate the right expectations and timeline and process, and also sets the stage for what piece of the puzzle each person has to play and how they're going to contribute to the common goal. We found also is very important to make it tangible, right? So make sure that you can relay the right value to the different stakeholders, because somebody who's a daily user will have different expectations than somebody who is an executive leadership. So making sure that you get the right alignment will help with the support you need.
Finally, let's talk a little bit about process. So it's really tempting to think, hey, I've got great technology, I've got the right people involved, adoption takes care of itself, right? I think everybody in this room probably knows that's not necessarily true. So it's really important to be intentional about change management. So we'll talk a little bit about how to do that. And really what we see is folks who undertake this with a lot of care and attention typically see the most durable change. It's really tempting, I think, to think that this is going to be like a light switch, right? You turn the CDP on, boom, it's all working. But it's really more like the gradual dimmer, right? You're slowly increasing it as kind of you're deploying different use cases and seeing progress along the way. So we'll kind of talk through some of the steps that we often see folks undertake. The first is identifying those change agents, right? That tiger team, the folks who are really going to be involved in the project, making sure you've probably already aligned on goals for the investment first, but again, making sure everybody's bought in on those goals, and use cases defining that crawl, walk, run approach, and using that to assess impact, right? So how is this going to impact our current processes, our systems, our teams? And then generating some of that organizational buy-in. Then you're configuring for those quick wins. We often recommend start small, right? Get something on the board and then expand from there. And then training users, and Valerie will talk a little bit more about how they did this. And then ultimately you get to launch some of those quick wins, and then what we see be really successful is going on a roadshow after that. So taking that out to the org, right? It's typically when we see those light bulb moments go off of like, oh my gosh, you did this? What if we did this? What if we did this? And then the rumors start going throughout the org and everybody wants to become a part of the CDP project, right? And then you get to start it all over again and kind of do it again as you continue to expand and include more teams. Valerie, I think this is where you really shine. So we'd love to hear a little bit more about your story of user adoption and change management.
Absolutely. So you're integrated and you think you're ready to go, but there's still a lot more that needs to be done. In terms of training, we really approached it with business questions and examples that a lot of the key stakeholders had been asking us on a regular basis. So this took a training that could be somewhat long and dry into something that they could really relate to and integrate into their day-to-day, right? Understand how it relates to them and the value it would bring to them. In addition, we didn't want initial platform paralysis. So we developed over 150 pre-built segments, which were directly correlated to the business questions the users were asking us, as well as commonly used audiences, so they could easily go in and iterate on it, as well as activate those use cases very quickly. We also developed multiple training manuals, which really showed an end-to-end and step-by-step process. So it was a takeaway that anybody could use at any given time. And there is value to this because there are several users who actually never went through the training but have trained themselves using the manual specifically. And lastly, we set up a power user community. This is a small group of people across the organization who are help evangelizing the tool and driving adoption. This has been really helpful in terms of socializing results and success and providing feedback along the way.
That's awesome. And do you have an example of, as you were socializing results, a use case that really had some of those like light bulb moments that got people really excited?
Yeah, I mean, micro-segmentation is really something that was an unlock for us. Understanding how to target those niche audiences against our large-scale audiences and understanding how they perform in terms of engagement and revenue and conversion, and then taking that and laddering it up to really understanding how we could be more strategic in our targeting, as well as optimizing our budget and bandwidth and maximizing our revenue.
That's awesome. Great. So before we open up for Q&A, just want to wrap a little bit on kind of our general approach here at Amperity. So we obviously want to try to incorporate all of these best practices into our partnerships with our customers. And so we try to design solutions that are really thoughtful about this. Of course, the technology piece of it, but also from a people perspective, making sure that we have services offerings that can augment your team if you need additional bandwidth or expertise. And then also on the process component, kind of working some of these things into our implementation methodology, as well as our ongoing partnership roadmap alignment process to make sure that we're really focused on those quick wins, crawl, walk, run, and ultimately driving business outcomes. So we're going to open up for Q&A in a second, but I'll kick us off while everybody's kind of thinking of any questions that you might have. So Valerie, curious about kind of as you got through your quick wins and you started to tackle more complicated stuff, what were some of the things that you all took on?
Yeah, our next step was really developing dashboards to glean deeper insights on our customers. So we developed multiple dashboards, from out-of-the-box executive dashboards and customer reporting dashboards to more customized ones, such as promotional dashboards, so we could understand what customers do and don't need a promotion and be able to market our communications in a more tailored manner.
Awesome. Any questions in the audience?
We used it within the platform, and we're using Tableau as a visualization tool for the users. It was a journey. With gaining a lot of stakeholder alignment and going through the RFP process, that could take as long or as little as it makes sense for your organization. Once we did get that buy-in, we hit the ground running pretty quick, and we had stood up the platform in from 6 to 9 months. Ready to launch from when we were ready to start everything. We did start use cases right away, so we were able to measure success pretty quickly, and we've kept a really close handle on it, so we understand the pulse and the different levers that we could pull. Great question. We have teams, so I'm on a transversal team that sits across all of our brands with CRM, so we have a lot of users from CRM and analytics on our transversal team. And then we have our brand teams, which are e-commerce, media, and marketing. We have also some other users across the organization. It's a pretty wide array of users. And that's also how we've seen some really good adoption because we have been able to socialize the results and everybody is kind of excited to use it. We meet on a monthly basis with the super users, but we also, I try to bring it up in every meeting I have. My team knows.
Change agents, yes, we love it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, we are integrated to export into our customer service platform, so the agents are able to tap into some of the data so they could deliver a better customer experience when they have somebody call. That was a phase 2, yes. We brought everything in. We use the same tech stack across all of our brands, so it made sense to bring in all of the data at the same time. Yeah, I think everybody probably is in the same boat with data. You know, there's so many different systems that weren't necessarily designed to work together or talk to one another. So we definitely prioritized the right ones for our immediate use cases and ensured we had everything to build that C360 at the get-go. So there were things that we needed to bring in as business critical. And then as we started to evolve, we have found new sources that make sense to bring in. No, but I would say every use case is different, right? We brought all that PII data at the onset, and the secondary data we brought in was not necessarily to be stitched, but it augmented it.
You were building out the profile. That makes
Yes.
sense, yeah.
So when you prioritized your data,
There were a lot of conversations. So again, what I always find is having the data to support those conversations is always really helpful. I think it tells a great story. So we were able to really showcase in advance what we projected in terms of the value it would drive and then the efficiencies as well, because that's a huge part for us as well. Making it easier for our team to be able to self-serve was a really big unlock.
Well, thank you so much, Valerie. Really appreciate you sharing your story with us. Thank you, everybody in the audience.
Thank you.